Lily was 9 months pregnant, and as anyone who's been there can attest, this wasn't the glowing, magical part of pregnancy that people talk about. She was tired, achy, and one misstep away from swearing off marriage entirely. Not that her husband, Daniel, was making things any easier. In fact, he seemed to be doing everything in his power to make this experience as lonely as possible for her. Take last Thursday, for instance. There she was, standing in the kitchen, belly so big she couldn't even see her feet, when Daniel walked in, tossed his jacket on the couch, because hanging it up was clearly too much effort, and with a smirk said, "Going to my mom's tonight, babe. She's making her famous pot roast." Lily stared at him, slack-jawed. Pot roast? Really? She had been cooking his favorite lasagna all afternoon, her ankles swollen like water balloons, and he was just going to walk out? No mention of helping her, no appreciation for dinner, nothing. "Lasagna in the oven," she managed to say, her tone flat. But Daniel, bless his heart, acted like he hadn't heard a word. "Oh yeah, well, I'll eat it when I get back. Maybe. You know how my mom is. She hates when I leave hungry," he said, chuckling to himself as if that was some kind of joke. The man was oblivious, truly. And Lily, who had once found his cluelessness sort of endearing, was starting to feel the stirrings of a deep and profound rage. But instead of throwing the lasagna at his head like she wanted to, she just nodded and shuffled back to the kitchen, plotting his downfall. As if that weren't enough, Daniel's selective memory struck again the next morning. She had sent him out with one single task: pick up groceries. And of course, when he returned, arms full of junk food and enough frozen pizza to feed a small army, he had completely forgotten the one thing she actually needed: her prenatal vitamins. But what he didn't forget? A six-pack of beer. "Seriously, Daniel?" Lily said, eyeing the cans of beer like they were a symbol of his incompetence. "You forgot my vitamins, but remembered your beer?" He looked at her with that innocent, boyish grin that had once charmed her, but now made her want to scream. "Oh, come on, babe. It's not like we're out of vitamins yet, but it's game night. I couldn't risk running out of beer." Game night. Of course. She wanted to remind him that he wasn't a college frat boy anymore, but a grown man about to become a father. But she bit her tongue, imagining herself as the calm, rational one in this scenario. It was getting harder by the minute. And then came the incident with the beer. Lily had finally worked up the courage to have a serious talk with Daniel about pulling his weight more. But just as she was getting into it, Daniel realized there was only one can of beer left in the fridge. His eyes widened, a look of pure panic crossing his face, like he'd just been told the apocalypse was upon them. "There's only one left," he said, rushing to the fridge as if that would magically fix the problem. Lily, who was in the middle of explaining how she needed more help with the baby on the way, paused. "Daniel, are you seriously more worried about running out of beer than the fact that I'm about to have a baby?" His response? "Babe, beer is essential. You can't have game night without beer." At that moment, she couldn't help it. She laughed. It wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from something being funny, but the kind that comes when you're so exasperated that you either laugh or cry, and Lily wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of tears. But the last straw came that evening. When Daniel strolled into the kitchen to grab his beer, completely ignoring the lasagna she'd spent hours preparing. "Going out with the guys tonight?" he said casually, as though his pregnant wife was an afterthought. "I'll be back later." Lily didn't say a word. She just stood there, frozen, while he grabbed his keys and left without so much as a backward glance. "Are you serious right now?" she muttered under her breath. But Daniel was already gone, the door clicking shut behind him. She stared down at the perfectly set table, complete with candles because she had tried to make an effort, and then at the lasagna that was now going cold. All that time, all that energy, wasted. She was done. She could feel the exhaustion settling into her bones, but it wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional. Daniel's lack of support was chipping away at her every day, and she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't something she wanted to fight for anymore. And that's when it hit her. She was seriously considering a divorce. Not in a passing, frustrated kind of way, but in the "let me Google divorce lawyers" kind of way. The next morning, when Daniel breezed in like nothing had happened and gave her a quick peck on the cheek before heading off to work, Lily was already drafting the pros and cons of leaving him. She had been trying to hold on, but at some point, you had to admit when something was broken beyond repair. Lily looked down at her stomach, resting her hands protectively on the growing life inside her. This baby deserved better. She deserved better. And if Daniel couldn't figure that out soon, he was going to find himself eating pot roast at his mother's for the rest of his life. For now, though, she'd let him remain blissfully ignorant. The showdown was coming. Lily wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily, not when there was lasagna still in the fridge. The weekend trip was all Daniel could talk about. His parents had rented a cozy cabin by the lake for a little family getaway, and he was downright giddy about it. Lily, on the other hand, was having a hard time sharing in his enthusiasm. She was less than a week from her due date, waddling around like a penguin, and couldn't even see her toes anymore. A relaxing weekend away sounded like a nightmare wrapped in a horror story. "Come on, babe, it'll be fun," Daniel said, tossing his duffel bag into the trunk of the car with a careless grin. "Just the four of us. Me, you, Mom, and Dad. Yeah, fun. If your idea of fun was going into labor in the middle of nowhere while your husband argued with his mom about who made the better potato salad, I really don't think this is a good idea," Lily said, doing her best to sound reasonable. But reasonable wasn't a language Daniel understood. What if the baby comes early? We should be close to the hospital. Daniel waved her off, not even glancing up from his phone as he texted his friends about the football game. "Relax, babe. First-time moms are always late. My mom said she went 2 weeks past her due date with me, and I turned out fine." Lily resisted the urge to point out that his mother had also raised him to think that a six-pack of beer was a legitimate replacement for prenatal vitamins. Instead, she took a deep breath and tried again. "I don't feel well, Daniel. Maybe we should stay home." He finally looked up, eyes narrowing like he just caught on to what she was doing. "Wait, are you trying to get out of this trip?" "Caught." Lily hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Yes, okay, I am. I'm tired, my back hurts, and I feel like I'm going to pop at any second. Can we please just skip this weekend?" Daniel's face twisted into a mix of confusion and frustration, like he couldn't quite grasp why anyone would pass up a chance to hang out with his parents. "Babe, we've been planning this for weeks. You can't back out now. My mom made her famous pot roast. Besides, it'll be good for you to get some fresh air before the baby comes. Trust me." Lily let out a long, defeated sigh. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust that he would handle anything if she went into labor in the middle of the woods, let alone trust him to stay calm if she so much as asked for a glass of water. But Daniel had already made up his mind. And when Daniel made up his mind, there was no reasoning with him. The drive to the cabin was long and tense, made worse by the fact that every time Lily shifted in her seat, Daniel looked over like she was about to give birth right there in the car. "Do you have to move so much?" he grumbled after the third time she adjusted her position. "Well, considering I'm carrying a watermelon around in my belly, yeah, I do," Lily snapped. "Maybe you should have thought about that before dragging me on this little vacation." Daniel rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic." The baby, however, had other plans. About halfway there, Lily felt a sharp pain shoot through her abdomen, followed by a deep, rolling sensation that left her breathless. She clutched her belly, trying to hide the panic rising in her chest. "Daniel, I think something's happening." He glanced over at her, brow furrowed. "What do you mean? Like, you need to pee?" "No, Daniel," she said through gritted teeth. "I think the baby's coming." Daniel's eyes widened, and for a split second, Lily thought he might actually rise to the occasion and do something helpful. But instead, his face morphed into one of pure terror. "We're not even close to the hospital. We have to get you out of the car. You're not giving birth in here. I just had it detailed." Lily stared at him, dumbfounded. "You're kidding, right?" He wasn't. Daniel pulled over to the side of the road, throwing the car into park. Without a word, he jumped out, ran around to her side, and yanked the door open. "Come on, let's go. You can't have the baby in here." "Daniel, I am not getting out of this car." But Daniel was already pulling on her arm, trying to coax her out like she was a toddler refusing to leave the playground. "Lily, you're going to ruin the seats." "That's what you're worried about? The seats?" Lily could barely believe what she was hearing. She was literally in labor, and her husband's top concern was the leather interior. Her irritation quickly morphed into a seething fury, and with a burst of energy she didn't know she had, she shoved him away. I am not moving until you get me to a hospital. Fine. Daniel threw his hands up in the air like he was the victim here. But if anything happens to the car, it's on you. As Daniel sped off toward the nearest hospital, Lily grabbed her phone and, with shaking hands, texted the one person she knew would actually help: Sarah, her neighbor. Sarah, unlike Daniel, had common sense and a car that wasn't at risk of being emotionally harmed by childbirth. Within minutes, Sarah had responded, I'm coming. Hang tight. Lily exhaled a sigh of relief, feeling a small glimmer of hope. At least someone was on her side. As Daniel continued his panicked race toward the hospital, Lily focused on her breathing, trying to calm herself. But in the back of her mind, she was already planning her next move. If Daniel thought she was dramatic now, he had no idea what she was capable of once the baby arrived. By the time they pulled into the hospital parking lot, Sarah was already waiting by the entrance, arms crossed and ready to spring into action. She waved them down and, without hesitation, helped Lily out of the car, shooting Daniel a look that could melt steel. I got her from here, Sarah said coolly, guiding Lily inside while Daniel stood there looking bewildered. Good luck with the car, Lily called over her shoulder, not even bothering to hide her sarcasm. Once inside, Lily felt the weight of everything lift, just a little. The baby was coming, and soon enough, she'd be surrounded by people who actually cared about her well-being. But as she waddled into the delivery room, one thought kept crossing her mind. This was the beginning of the end for her and Daniel. He just didn't know it yet. Lily hadn't imagined it would go down like this. Sure, she'd always pictured Daniel being clueless when the baby came, maybe pacing around in the hospital waiting room like a sitcom dad. But the reality was far worse. He was nowhere to be found, and Lily was left navigating labor with only the support of people who actually cared. Which, surprise, surprise, didn't include Daniel. As soon as Sarah helped her into the hospital, it became clear who her real partner in this ordeal was. Sarah didn't just hover around wringing her hands. She took charge like some kind of superhero in yoga pants. In fact, the moment they got to the front desk, she barked orders at the nurse like she had been rehearsing for this moment her entire life. Lily's in labor, and she needs a room now, Sarah said with a calm authority that had the hospital staff moving at lightning speed. Lily, clutching her belly through another contraction, couldn't help but glance at Sarah with admiration. She had never seen someone so composed in the face of chaos. Well, except for maybe when Sarah once convinced a plumber to show up at 3 a.m. to fix a leak by using nothing but charm and a well-timed cookie bribe. Within minutes, Lily was settled into a delivery room, and Sarah was by her side like an over-prepared coach at the Super Bowl, ready to tackle anything that came their way. Meanwhile, Daniel was probably somewhere in a hospital parking lot, Googling how to get amniotic fluid out of leather seats. As the labor progressed, Lily felt a mixture of nerves, pain, and, oddly enough, humor. There was something almost comical about the whole situation. She was about to bring a tiny human into the world, while the father of said human was likely fuming about the air freshener in his car. The ridiculousness of it wasn't lost on her. Should we call Daniel? One of the nurses asked at some point, trying to be helpful. Lily snorted, mid-contraction. Why? Is there a car detailer on staff? The nurse looked confused, but Sarah laughed. No, I think we're good. Let him figure it out. Between contractions, Lily's mind wandered to all the moments that had led her here. The missed dinners, the constant comparisons to Daniel's mom, the utter lack of support. She realized this moment was a microcosm of their entire relationship. She was doing the hard work, and Daniel was off worrying about trivial nonsense. The contractions were coming faster now, and the pain was, well, exactly what the books had warned about. But as she bore down, focusing on her breathing, Sarah's voice was the one steady thing keeping her grounded. You've got this, Lily, Sarah said, gripping her hand. One more push. Just then, the door flew open, and in stumbled none other than Daniel, looking wild-eyed and frazzled as if he had just survived a natural disaster. He had his phone in one hand and an iced coffee in the other, which he sloshed around as he fumbled to find his bearings. I'm here! I made it! He panted, clearly out of breath. What's happening? Did I miss it? Lily gave him a look so withering that even Sarah winced. Oh, you're here now? That's great. You just missed the part where I almost had the baby in your precious car. Daniel blinked, completely missing the sarcasm. Really? Oh man, that would have been terrible for the seats. Sarah rolled her eyes so hard Lily thought they might get stuck. Focus, Daniel. Your wife is in labor. That's what's happening. Oh, right. Right, Daniel said, scrambling to the other side of the bed, still clutching his iced coffee like it was a lifeline. What do I do? Do you need anything? Want a sip of this? Lily just stared at him, feeling both a strange sense of disbelief and the urge to laugh, despite everything. The man truly had no clue. He wasn't even trying to be selfish, he just was. No, Daniel, I don't want iced coffee, she said through gritted teeth. I want you to stand there, be quiet, and let me push this baby out without you making it about yourself. Daniel nodded, wide-eyed. Okay, yeah, got it. Silent support. I'm here for it. Another contraction hit, and Lily gripped the side of the bed, focusing on Sarah's steady voice and ignoring Daniel's nervous energy. In that moment, she realized that this would be her future with Daniel, him bumbling around, clueless and selfish, while she handled the real work. And now, there was going to be a baby in the mix. With one final push, the room was suddenly filled with the piercing cry of her newborn baby. A wave of relief, joy, and exhaustion washed over Lily as the nurses rushed to place the tiny, wriggling bundle in her arms. Oh my God, she whispered, looking down at her baby. I did it. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. You sure did. You're a warrior. Lily smiled weakly, but her attention was already elsewhere. This little baby was perfect, a beautiful, tiny person she had carried for 9 months. And now that the baby was here, the weight of everything else in her life felt so much lighter. Daniel's cluelessness? His selfishness? It seemed so distant now, like something she could finally let go of. Daniel, meanwhile, was peering at the baby from a cautious distance, still holding his iced coffee. Wow, babe. That's our baby, huh? Yes, Daniel. That's our baby, Lily said, exhaustion lacing her words. And you didn't do a single thing to help. There was no venom in her voice, just a tired acknowledgement of the truth. Daniel, to his credit, seemed to recognize that this wasn't the time to argue. He shuffled awkwardly in place before nodding. Yeah, I guess I didn't. For a moment, the room was quiet, save for the baby's soft cooing. Sarah stayed beside Lily, her presence a comforting reminder that not everyone in Lily's life was as useless as Daniel. And in that moment, holding her newborn, Lily felt more certain than ever. She didn't need Daniel to raise this child. She didn't need him to be a father because he wasn't capable of it. What she needed, what she had, was a support system that included people like Sarah. People who actually showed up when it mattered. As the nurses wheeled Lily and the baby to a private recovery room, Daniel trailed behind, still clutching his now watery iced coffee. Lily glanced over at Sarah and gave her a knowing look. So, Lily said, half smiling, how long do you think before he realizes he's not getting an invitation to the next game night? Sarah grinned. Oh, I give him about 3 days. Tops. Lily laughed softly, but her mind was already racing ahead, thinking of the future, of the next steps. It wasn't just about Daniel's ignorance anymore. It was about her realizing she deserved better. She had more than just a new baby now. She had a new life, and she wasn't going to let anyone, especially not Daniel, get in the way of that. As the door closed behind them, Lily felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had survived labor, she had a beautiful baby, and most importantly, she had the clarity she needed to move forward. What Daniel didn't know yet, what he hadn't figured out in all his obliviousness, was that this was the start of something new for her, and she wasn't looking back. By the time Lily was back in her recovery room with her newborn, the gravity of what had just happened started to sink in. She had given birth, her life had changed forever, and Daniel was still acting like this was some minor inconvenience to his otherwise carefree existence. The hospital room was calm, but Lily's mind was buzzing with everything that had happened over the last 24 hours. She glanced at her phone, expecting messages from her mom or maybe a congratulatory text from a friend. But instead, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. Dozens of notifications from social media. What in the world? She muttered, opening her messages to find her group chat with her friends blowing up. Apparently, Sarah, Sweet, lovely, always on top of things Sarah had posted about the entire labor ordeal. Not just a little congrats to Lily on her baby post either. No, this was a full-blown story detailing how Daniel had freaked out over his car seats, showed up late to the birth, and had generally been a disaster of a partner. And it had gone viral. Lily's phone pinged with a new message. It was from Rachel, one of her oldest friends. Girl, have you seen the comments on Sarah's post? Daniel is getting roasted harder than Thanksgiving turkey. Lily blinked, still in shock. She clicked over to the post and scrolled through the hundreds of comments. Sure enough, people were piling on, with reactions ranging from disbelief to outright mockery. Who leaves their wife alone in labor to save car seats? This guy is next level clueless. Imagine worrying more about leather seats than your first child being born. Shash priorities. This is the kind of man who'd probably ask for a snack mid-labor. Lily couldn't help it. She burst out laughing. The absurdity of the situation had finally caught up with her. Here she was, less than 24 hours postpartum, reading comments from strangers tearing her husband apart online. Daniel, meanwhile, had no idea what was happening. He was sitting in the corner of the room, scrolling through his own phone, oblivious to the fact that the internet had turned him into a meme. Just then, the door opened, and in walked Sarah, her expression a mix of triumph and concern. Hey, how are you feeling? And have you seen? She trailed off, glancing at Daniel, then back at Lily, raising an eyebrow. Lily waved her hand dismissively, still giggling. Oh, I've seen it. I cannot believe this is real life right now. Daniel finally looked up, confused. What are you guys talking about? Before Lily could answer, her phone rang. It was her mother-in-law. Of course. She sighed, already anticipating what was coming. With one look at Sarah, she hit decline and set the phone back down. Not today, she muttered. I can't deal with her right now. Sarah gave her a knowing smile and sat down next to the bed. I'm guessing she saw the post? Oh, I'm sure of it. And she's probably already on her way over to defend Daniel and tell me I'm too emotional because of the hormones. Sarah snorted. Too emotional? Please, she has no idea. You're a saint for not throwing something at him during labor. Lily leaned back against the pillows, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and vindication. I'm seriously considering changing the locks before I even leave the hospital. Is that too dramatic? Sarah grinned. Not at all. In fact, I can call my cousin right now. He's a locksmith. Lily's phone pinged again, another message. This one was from an old college friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Lily, I just saw that post. Please tell me you're divorcing that guy. And that's when it hit her. People weren't just laughing at Daniel's stupidity. They were taking sides, and overwhelmingly, they were on her side. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily felt a rush of confidence. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. The world could see what she had been dealing with, and they agreed. Daniel was a disaster. As if on cue, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Daniel's mom calling for the third time. Lily didn't even look at it. She knew exactly what would happen if she answered. His mother would try to smooth everything over, explain that Daniel was under a lot of stress and that men just don't handle these things the way women do. There would be some backhanded comment about how Lily needed to be more patient, how this was all part of marriage, how she was being unfair to her husband. But Lily wasn't having it. Not anymore. I'm done, she said aloud, surprising even herself. I'm really done. Sarah raised an eyebrow, glancing at Daniel, who was still oblivious to everything happening around him. You mean with Daniel? Lily nodded, her mind clearer than it had been in months. Yeah, this is the last straw. I can't keep making excuses for him. He's been selfish, checked out, and honestly, just a bad partner. I'm not raising a baby with someone who cares more about his car than his family. Sarah nodded in agreement. I think that's a smart decision. You've been doing all the heavy lifting in this relationship for way too long. Just then, the door opened, and a nurse popped her head in. Mrs. Harper? I just wanted to let you know that your discharge papers are ready, and we'll be getting everything wrapped up soon. Lily smiled gratefully. Thank you. As the nurse left, Lily turned to Sarah. I'm going to need your help. I can't face Daniel's parents alone when they come barreling in here. Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. Oh, you know I've got your back. I'll handle his parents, don't worry. Sure enough, within the hour, Daniel's parents showed up, His mom, predictably, was a whirlwind of concern and faux sympathy. "Oh, Lily, sweetheart, I'm so sorry we weren't here sooner. How are you feeling? You must be so overwhelmed." Lily forced a polite smile. "I'm fine, thank you, just tired." Daniel's mom went straight into damage control mode, launching into a long-winded speech about how difficult childbirth was for everyone, meaning, of course, that Daniel was struggling too. "And poor Daniel," she said, glancing at him with a sad smile. "He's been so stressed lately. You know how men are. They just don't know how to help sometimes." Sarah cut in, unable to hold back. "Oh, he definitely doesn't know how to help, that's for sure." Daniel's mom blinked, thrown off by Sarah's tone. "Well, I'm sure he did his best." Lily had had enough. She turned to Daniel's mom, her voice calm but firm. "Actually, I don't think his best is good enough anymore." The room went silent. Even Daniel looked up from his phone, finally sensing that something serious was happening. "What do you mean?" his mom asked, her voice wavering. Lily took a deep breath. "I mean that I'm done with all of this. Daniel and we're not working. I've been doing everything on my own for too long, and now that the baby's here, I'm not willing to keep pretending that we're fine. We're not." Daniel's face drained of color. "Wait, what are you saying? You want a divorce?" Lily looked him square in the eyes, feeling more sure of herself than she had in years. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." The room erupted into chaos. Daniel's mom started crying. His dad looked like he wanted to punch something. And Daniel just sat there, completely dumbfounded. But amidst all the noise, Lily felt a sense of peace. She had made her decision, and there was no going back. As the nurses came in to help with her discharge, Lily glanced over at Sarah, who gave her a wink. "Told you I'd handle his parents." And she did. By the time Lily was wheeled out of the hospital with her newborn in her arms, Daniel's family was too busy dealing with their own shock to put up much of a fight. Lily climbed into the car, her own car, driven by Sarah, not Daniel. And as they pulled out of the hospital parking lot, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope for a future where she wasn't constantly bending over backward to accommodate someone else's selfishness. Hope for a life where she and her baby could thrive without the weight of Daniel dragging them down. And, in the back of her mind, a tiny mischievous thought. She couldn't wait to see what the internet had to say about the divorce. Lily sat on the couch in her parents' living room, a hot cup of tea in her hands and her newborn napping peacefully in the bassinet beside her. It had been 2 weeks since the big hospital showdown, 2 weeks since she had declared to Daniel and his family that she was done, and 2 weeks of the calmest, most stress-free days she had experienced in a long, long time. But as peaceful as it was, the storm outside was brewing. Not literally, but metaphorically, because Daniel had refused to take her decision lying down. He had called her no less than 10 times a day since the hospital, each message more frantic than the last. At first, it was the usual, "We can work this out, babe, I promise I'll change" kind of thing, which would have been laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. Then it shifted to, "You're ruining our family," and finally escalated to what Lily had come to expect, complete and utter denial. "You're not really going through with this, right? You're just emotional." Emotional. That word had become her least favorite in the English language. She was emotional when she had asked him to stay home with her instead of going out with his friends. She was emotional when she told him she needed more help around the house. And now, apparently, wanting a divorce was just another example of her being emotional. Lily took a deep sip of tea and rolled her eyes. If anything, Daniel's behavior was cementing her decision. There was no going back now. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel, no doubt. She didn't even bother looking at it. But Sarah, who had become her unofficial support system through all this, snatched it up from the coffee table and glanced at the screen. "Ugh, Lily, it's Daniel again. He's left like 6 voicemails today. Want me to block him?" Lily chuckled. "As tempting as that is, I probably need to hear what he's saying. Especially since my lawyer is going to want to know about all this." Sarah groaned dramatically. "Fine, but just know that the next time he sends a baby, I miss you text, I'm throwing that phone in the nearest lake." Lily laughed, feeling a strange sense of lightness. Even with everything going on, Sarah had a way of making her feel like she wasn't drowning in drama. It was a skill, really, to add humor to a dumpster fire of a situation. Speaking of lawyers, Sarah continued, pulling out her own phone. Did you hear back from yours about Daniel's latest stunt? Lily sighed, rubbing her temples. Yeah, he's refusing to sign the divorce papers unless I agree to joint custody. And get this, he wants the baby to stay at his parents' house 2 nights a week. 2 nights at his parents' house. Sarah's jaw dropped. Are you kidding me? He wants to hand the baby off to his mom so she can cook her famous pot roast while he plays video games in the basement? Basically, Lily said with a snort, he doesn't even want to take care of the baby himself. He just wants to pawn him off on his parents and act like that counts as fatherhood. Sarah leaned back on the couch, shaking her head. That man is delusional. He thinks this is all some kind of game, like he can just win by making ridiculous demands. Lily nodded, her mind racing. Her lawyer had already warned her that Daniel might try to pull something like this, acting like he wanted custody not because he actually did, but because it gave him leverage in the divorce. It wasn't about the baby, it was about control. Well, he's not getting joint custody, Lily said firmly. I'm not letting him take our baby to his parents' house where they'll act like they're the ones raising him. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Good. And make sure your lawyer knows about all the voicemails and texts. The more evidence you have of his inability to take this seriously, the better. Just as Sarah finished her sentence, Lily's phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't Daniel. It was a message from her friend Rachel. OMG, you have to see this, the message read, followed by a link. Lily raised an eyebrow and clicked on the link. It led to a viral post, this time not from Sarah, but from one of Daniel's coworkers. Apparently, word had spread about the whole labor fiasco, and someone had decided to air all the dirty laundry in a scathing post on social media. The post detailed Daniel's antics during the birth, including the infamous car seat incident, and went on to speculate about his impressive ability to fail at adulting. Lily's eyes widened as she read through the comments. People were piling on, not just making fun of Daniel, but sharing stories of their own disastrous experiences with him. Wait, didn't he get fired? Lily asked, glancing at Sarah, who was already smirking. Oh yeah, Sarah said. My husband told me that after the whole hospital drama went viral, Daniel's boss decided he wasn't exactly leadership material anymore. Apparently, he was showing up late to work and complaining about his overbearing pregnant wife to anyone who would listen. When the post went viral, it was the last straw. They canned him. Lily blinked, momentarily stunned. She had no idea things had escalated so quickly. So he lost his job because of this? Sarah nodded, looking more than a little pleased. Yup, and apparently he's been calling around to every old friend he has, trying to find a new job. But no one wants to touch him. His reputation is in the toilet. Lily didn't know how to feel about that. On the one hand, she didn't exactly want Daniel to lose his livelihood. After all, he was still responsible for paying child support. But on the other hand, a part of her felt, well, a little vindicated. For years, she had put up with his selfishness, his inability to take responsibility, and now the world was finally seeing him for who he really was. Well, Lily said slowly, I guess that's what happens when you live your life like a man-child. Sooner or later, it catches up with you. Sarah snorted. Oh, it caught up with him, all right. My husband heard that his parents are furious. They were already annoyed about the baby drama, but now that Daniel's unemployed and mooching off them, they're done. He's officially their problem again. Lily shook her head, still processing everything. It was strange, this mix of emotions. On the one hand, she felt sorry for Daniel, but on the other, she couldn't deny the sense of freedom she felt now that she was out from under his thumb. As they sat in silence for a moment, Lily's phone buzzed again. This time, it was her lawyer. Good news, the message read. Daniel has finally agreed to sign the divorce papers. He's not happy about it, but he knows he's got no leverage left. I'll send the finalized documents over later today. Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It was over. The divorce was finally happening. She looked over at Sarah, who was watching her expectantly. Well? Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. What did he say? Lily smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her for the first time in what felt like forever. It's done. He's signing the papers. Sarah let out a whoop of joy and threw her arms around Lily. Oh my God! That's amazing! I knew he'd crack eventually, Lily laughed, hugging her friend back. Yeah, I think the universe finally gave him the wake-up call he needed. As they sat there, celebrating the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, Lily couldn't help but feel like she was finally free. Free from Daniel's selfishness, from his lack of support, from all the baggage that had weighed her down for so long. She looked over at her baby, sleeping peacefully in the bassinet, and smiled. This was the start of something new, a life where she and her baby would thrive, surrounded by people who actually cared. And maybe, just maybe, they'd even have a little peace and quiet along the way. But not too much peace. Because knowing Sarah, there was always another adventure waiting just around the corner.